So I've imported a few K trucks, and I've helped a few of you guys import them too. Now I'm taking a big leap and I'm importing an R32 GTR. Could I just get one that's here in the US already? Yeah, obviously. But where's the fun in that? Well, actually, there's a special circumstance that kind of requires me to do my own import. I received a major award.
It's a major award! I won it!
No shit. Last July, I got an email saying I had won $20,000 in store credit from beforward in their 20th anniversary contest. After making sure I wasn't being scammed into buying Target gift cards from a Nigerian prince, I realized that now was the time to get one of my dream cars. So I jumped on beforward's website and spent the next week or so agonizing over what car I was going to get. As we all know, the R34s are just out of control right now, and everybody picks on the middle child R33. Really, the Hakasukas are the best, but they're priced just as bad as the R34s. So let's go with the OG Godzilla from the early 90s. An R32. Today we're headed up to Jacksonville to go pick up the GTR. Now there were a ton of them listed for sale, but some of them are kind of pricey also. So I'm trying to stay in the middle of the road, ideally something under 40K and in good shape with fairly low miles. So I landed on this one. I was able to get a bunch of pictures of it and verify that it was in great mechanical condition. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger on this one. But what are the steps that are involved and all the headaches that you have to know before you go ahead and import a car for yourself? So I get a bunch of comments about this process, and some viewers are just like, this seems like a pain in the ass. Why would you do it yourself? And I wouldn't buy something without driving it first, or I'll just get one that's here already. And to those people I say, why the hell are you watching this video? Just pay somebody to do it for you. Or just buy one that's already here and pay a lot more for it. If you have more money than brains and want to pay somebody else to do something that you can easily do for yourself, go ahead. I have more brains than money. And while this isn't the easiest process to follow along, it's really not that difficult. There's also a few different levels at which you can choose to be involved in the process or not. So let's go over the basics of how the process works just one more time, and I'll tell you about the curveball that I got thrown at the end when I went to go pick up the vehicle. So in my last video, I covered all the specifics about buying a car from beforward directly. If you need some more insight on buying an R32, go ahead and watch that video. It has a lot more information than I'm going to give right here. Your first step is to pick the car that you want. Now this is going to obviously apply to anything, not just GTRs, but that's what we're talking about today. After you've selected what car you want, logically you want to send it to the port that's closest to you. There's a list of ports on beforward's website that they typically work with. I think you can ask for alternate ports, however that's probably going to come with added costs and time, since most vessels have a path that they travel to certain ports at certain times, which will give you a reasonable shipping rate. Your best bet is to have a port that has roll-on, roll-off capabilities, meaning the car won't be in a container, but it'll drive onto a big floating parking garage, and then it'll drive right off when it gets to your port. Expect to pay somewhere between $1,500 and $2,500 in shipping fees, depending on the size of the vehicle and the location of your port. Now for me, the closest ports are actually going to be Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, or Miami. I'm not sure if any of these ports have roll-on, roll-off capabilities, but most of them aren't on beforward's list of ports that they work with. Miami is on their list, but it requires a container, and the price is almost double. So the next closest port is going to be Jacksonville. And in all honesty, I'd definitely rather drive to Jacksonville than Miami. I've picked up Kiki and Biscuit from that port, so I'm very familiar with it, and I have a nice little routine worked out. I'll drive up on Sunday, and then wake up in the morning on Monday and go pick up the car from the port. This way I can get to port first thing in the morning, and it breaks up the trip into 2 4-hour trips instead of 1 8-hour one. So now that we have the port picked, let's request an invoice. This is going to have all the fees and costs associated with getting the car onto the vessel and out of Japan. At this point, with beforward as a seller, there should be no additional hidden fees. However, there are some additional costs once the car gets to the United States. So on a purchase like this, I just had to make a bank transfer. I don't always recommend this, depending on who you're working with. However, because the amount was so large, I really didn't want to put $15,000 or so on a credit card. I did have some additional bank fees for transferring the money to a Japanese bank. Once a vehicle is paid in full, the first step in the waiting process begins. I initiated the purchase on the 15th of July from a third-party seller in the Saitama area of Tokyo on beforward's website. Since there were some additional condition disclosures that the seller let beforward know of after the fact, beforward then made sure that I still wanted the car. I did, because it was nothing really major. It took about 5 days for beforward to receive the vehicle at their location in Yokohama. While they were waiting for my car, they began the process of trying to assign it to a vessel. Once they got the car, they took a bunch more photos and sent them over to me. Now you start waiting for your car to be assigned to a vessel. This is where the exporter arranges for your car or truck to be driven on a boat or stuck in a container, depending on what port you selected. The car was finally assigned a boat on the 9th of August, so it took about 3 weeks to get an assignment. A few days before it's actually loaded on the vessel, they'll send you a draft bill of lading. You have to take that and immediately file your ISF 10+2 form. From what I can tell, the ISF form is a customs document that basically informs the US government that you have a shipment coming and what it is. If you don't fill this out, there's a possibility that Customs and Border Protection will not allow it to be unloaded, or it may be subject to seizure. And it's supposed to be filled out before the vessel leaves port with your car on board. So please don't risk it and just file this damn form. I do it at EasyISF.com. If you're working with a broker, you can probably have them do it. You'll have to grant them power of attorney for filling that out, but you can do it all online and it costs like $25. I believe EasyISF can also handle the rest of your customs clearing and the bond, and the prices are pretty reasonable. But I've been using Sharon Dixon, and her prices might be a little bit more, but she's local to Jacksonville Port, and I like her and how she operates, so she's my dude. Next, the car is going to get loaded, and some more waiting. My car was loaded on the 21st, with the boat departing on the 22nd of August. So at this point, we're right around 5 weeks from the day that I bought the car. This is about the same amount of time I waited for the van to be assigned a vessel. However, I did get spoiled with my truck, which was purchased and shipped within 3 weeks. It's all just kind of a crapshoot with the vessel schedules and how busy they are and when you order. One of my favorite parts about this process is you can track your vessel's current location on vesselfinder.com and basically have a good time playing Where in the World is My JDM Classic. At some point with your vessel underway, the exporter is going to send you a packet of goodies. This is going to include the final bill of lading and the Japanese title. They'll also probably include a translated version of that title. However, certain states might make you translate it again with a certified copy. This is a copy where the translator provides a notarized letter saying that they are certified to translate that language. In Florida, you're going to need this when you go to register your vehicle. Now, I just used Rapid Translate for this. There's a link in the description. And depending on how quick you need it, the service starts at about $28. Again, your broker might do this for you. I'm not really sure. I just always make sure that they have everything they need from me beforehand. Now let's do some more waiting. So the shipping company sent me an arrival notice for the 1st of October, and they instructed me to make a payment for the handling fees. Now typically if I was doing this by myself, I would at that point make a wire transfer. But since Sharon was helping me with the brokerage this time, I went ahead and notified her and she took care of it and then added it to my bill. So since my car was coming in on the 1st, I began making plans on when I was going to get up to Jacksonville to go pick it up. Once it's unloaded, I have about 10 days to get it out of the port before they start charging me fees. And now is when Mother Nature decided to start messing with me. As the vessel was coming through the Panama Canal, Hurricane Helene started to form around that area. So they delayed the boat an extra day to make sure that the storm had cleared and wouldn't interfere with Jacksonville, since they weren't really sure where the path of the storm was going to be. So not that big of a deal, it'd be in on the 2nd. So initially I planned on making a little 3-state mini vacation of the whole thing. I was going to leave on the 3rd with my trailer and just leave it at my nephew's house near Daytona. I was going to drive to North Carolina for my grandmother-in-law's 90th birthday. Surprise! Then we were going to head over to my wife's best friend in Asheville because Hurricane Helene had just hit them pretty hard and we were going to drop off some supplies. Then I planned on just heading back to my nephew's house, grabbing the trailer, going back up to Jacksonville to grab the car, and I'd be back by the 7th. But then right before we left, the port strike happened on October 1st. So that lasted till the 3rd, and since the boat couldn't even stop at Jacksonville, it just continued on its way to New York.
Here's where I'm not really clear. I guess it would have been bad for it to stop in the middle of Hurricane Alley, and there really wasn't anywhere to anchor the boat. So it started heading up to the New York area. I guess they figured there was more areas to anchor and it probably would have been safer, and they probably had to go up there anyway after Jacksonville and Baltimore, so they just kind of reversed their normal route, going up to New York and then back south again. Conveniently enough, the strike only lasted a couple days and it ended on the 3rd. However, now they're not first in line to get to the dock, so they had to wait 2 or 3 days before they could come ashore and unload. After that, they stopped at the Baltimore port and said it would be unloaded on the 10th. I was on my way back south from North Carolina at this point, but then they told me that they added a Charleston stop. I can only assume this is because another hurricane formed out in the Gulf. Hurricane Milton made landfall in West Florida on the 9th and shot right out the other side on the 10th, missing Jacksonville by about 80 miles or so.
Now luckily the hurricane itself didn't really hit my area hard, but out of nowhere we got almost 50 freak tornadoes to the middle of Florida, including a super rare EF3 tornado that traveled about 29 miles from Wellington to Jupiter and went right through my neighborhood about 1 block from my house. We actually witnessed the tornado on the way home from work and I almost shit myself. So anyway, since the port made it out unscathed, they said now the vessel would be in on the 13th. So I tracked it there and sure enough it made it on its scheduled date. I then called customs on the 15th to give it some time to get out of inspections and the agricultural hold. And then I got the okay that it was all cleared and ready to pick up. Now you can hire an approved transporter to go get the car from the port, but I kind of like doing it. So the cost is about the same, since to get on port you're either going to need to have your TWIC certification or hire an escort with one. So we're ready to go pick it up. So I'm off work on Sundays and Mondays, so I start heading all the way back up on Sunday. I visited with my nephew and his girlfriend near Daytona and checked out his cool RX-7. And spend the night at a hotel in Jacksonville Beach where I know I can get my trailer in and out of without too much drama.
Morning.
Morning.
We're on our way to go to the port again. Go pick up a GTR.
Doesn't have a name yet.
Doesn't have a name yet. It'll have a name
Reckon
sooner or
though.
later.
Biscuit.
We have our Be Forward shirts on. We got Biscuit's shirt on. And the soon-to-be named GTR. So let's go to the port and go get another car. Let's make number 10. 10.
I get lost count.
I think it's 10.
We head over to the TWIC driver so they can escort me onto the property to get the GTR. I show them the location that I'm going and they say they can't take me there.
So,
Now we're heading to the port to pick up the car without a TWIC escort. The port's gonna escort us, I guess.
So apparently the car was unloaded to the SSA Atlantic slot, and for whatever reason, the TWIC driver wasn't authorized to escort me there. I don't really have any idea why. So they tell me to just go directly to the port and they're going to send an escort to the gate to meet me there. So I do that. And if you've ever been to a port, there's usually a huge security line of cars to get through. They keep it moving, but it still takes a bit. So by the time it's my turn, they say we can get somebody to come escort you, but it's like $200 and something instead of like the $150 I was previously going to pay with the escort. And they said they could only take me since it was my name on the invoice and my wife had to wait outside.
Hey, we don't serve their kind here.
What?
Your droids, they'll have to wait outside. We don't want them here.
Which was some bullshit. And at this point, I'm already way past the security gate at the port. Had I been just a few feet back, they would have let me let my wife out and she could have waited in the nearby office, but they wouldn't let me do that. So I had to turn all the way around and leave the port and then drop her off somewhere and then go back through the line and wait for the escort. Now there's not really much around the port area and she didn't want me to drop her off at the gas station to act like a lot lizard for the next 2 hours, so I brought her to the zoo. So while she played with the pandas, I returned back to port and then waited about 40 minutes to go get the GTR.
So I am through the security checkpoint and I am waiting for the port to provide me with an escort to get to SSA to go pick up the car. I've been here for almost 30 minutes now, maybe 40 minutes. And they close in like 15, so. Then they reopen again after lunch, but the lady from SSA called me and said that she knows that I'm on my way, so we'll see when they get here.
Finally, I was picked up and brought to SSA where I was able to load up the car. Normally I try to load up the car and get out of there as quick as I can since I'm paying for the escorts by the hour. But this time I took my sweet ass time because they didn't give me a time limit and I didn't have any help to load it up, so that was all a little ridiculous. I then drove back to pick up my wife at the zoo.
there's my ride.
Drives so nice. For like the fucking inch that
drove it. And then we made the 280-mile trip back to West Palm with my new car in tow. And here it is. This car is just insane. The acceleration is just nuts, and I couldn't be more happy with the condition. There are a few little imperfections here or there, and I knew about all of those. Nothing earth-shattering. It's a 34-year-old car, so it's to be expected.
So here's a list of all the steps that we just went through to get the car imported. Take a screenshot. So you should first decide if you're going to do this yourself or if you're going to use a broker. The good thing is, at any point in the process, if you're getting too overwhelmed, you can usually hand it over to a broker and they can pick it up from there and get your car imported for you. I just think it's easier to know in advance which way you're going to go. So first you're going to find and buy your vehicle. Then you're going to wait for your vessel assignment. Then file your ISF 10+2 form once you have your vessel and draft bill of lading. Next, you're going to start collecting all the necessary forms. You're going to wait for the package from the exporter, which is going to contain your bill of lading, your invoice, and your title. Just to be safe, you want to get your certified translation of your title, and then you can go ahead and fill out the rest of the forms, which is your EPA 3520 and the HS7 form. Usually your broker is going to provide those to you and tell you where to sign and what to fill out. The next step is you're going to receive your arrival notice, which will let you know when your car is actually going to come in. At that point, you can go ahead and pay all the unloading fees and all the handling fees to the port companies. A couple of days after your vehicle arrives, go ahead and call customs and make sure that the vehicle cleared. Now that your vehicle is ready to pick up, you're going to go ahead to the customs office and file all your forms if you're doing it yourself. If you're using a broker, they would have done this digitally. Then call the freight company that's holding your vehicle and make sure that they're ready for you to come pick it up. And then go ahead to the port with your TWIC escort and get your car. Okay, so my total cost breakdown is as follows. I spent $32,281 on the car. The marine insurance was an additional $80. Beforward's warranty, which covers certain mishaps if the car gets to you in much different condition than it should, was $80. I paid an extra $100 for the dirt cleaning prior to loading. The reason for this is there's an agricultural hold when the car gets to port to make sure that they're not allowing any foreign soil contaminants into the country. The freight from Yokohama to Jacksonville was $1,884. I was credited 20,020 points towards the purchase of the car from winning the beforward contest, which brought my out-of-pocket expenses to $15,405. Now, when I went to go pay that $15,000, my bank nailed me for a $462 international bank fee, which was only actually about 3%, but it still stung. Now, Sharon Dixon handled all the brokerage for me, which totaled $1,027.39. But that included the customs duty of $400, Norton Lilly's $177 fee, SSA Atlantic's $45 fee, and then a $100 ISF filing fee. And there was also a $56 bond. Her fee was $250 to handle all the headaches and file all the paperwork. Now, the cost to pick up the car from port was $200 because I couldn't use my normal TWIC escort and I had to use the port's escort. Now, tax, title, and registration on the car cost me $973. I was able to transfer my old Impala plate, which had already been paid up through the year, so there was just a small transfer fee plus the taxes. Now, of course, the first day I got it off the trailer, I managed to damage the brake line. I forgot to take the wheel strap off, so I had to repair it. So tack on another $13 and a couple days, and the car was fixed. So personally, I'm only in the car for about $17,513, which isn't really too bad for one of these cars. Here in the local market, they're worth anywhere between $40,000 and $60,000, depending on what you have done to the car and the condition of it. Now, this car is in relatively untouched conditions. There are a few tasteful mods, including the HKS intake and the Kakimoto exhaust and the teen coilovers. I didn't think I'd love the white wheels at first, but when I got the car, I realized they're actually a pearl white and they've really grown on me. So those are going to stay from now. They're a pretty rare model. They're Modiah 17x9s and they're designed by Kiichi Tsuchiya.
You know what DK stands for? Donkey Kong. Drift King.
I'd like to get the engine looked at by the RB expert in my area, but in the meantime, I had to make a few minor repairs. First, that brake line that I ruined when I got the car off the trailer, and then the second thing I had to do was repair the CV boot. It blew after about a month of driving, but it took me like 4 weeks to get the part in, so the car was down for almost a month waiting for that part. I also installed a new radio in it and a set of floor mats from Nismo because the old ones were looking pretty shabby. I'd really like to reupholster the seats because they have a couple imperfections in them also, And this weekend I'm going to install the Greddy remote oil filter so it'll make oil changes a little less messy. But past that, I'm not really sure what I want to do to it yet. Do I leave it stock-ish, or do I make it a 700 horsepower monster? Let me know what you would do to the car down below in the comments. If I've helped you at all importing your own Japanese car, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel and like this video. I also have a few t-shirts from beforward left, and if you're interested in one, leave a comment below and I'll go ahead and send one out to you for free. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys next time.